Welcome to the Past Life Regression radio show where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. I'm Jonathan Yorks, your host over the next 2 hours of this live call-in internet radio show based on the work I do in my private practice as a past life regression and life between lives regression therapist and spiritual counselor. We're streaming live here every Wednesday from 7 to 9 at the Go Network at gonet.com. That's G-E-A-U-X net.com. You can also catch us on Facebook at Facebook Live on my Facebook page at Jonathan Yorks, M-A-L-M-F-T-C-H-T, where after the show it's always recorded, so you can always find it afterwards, or you can listen to us on your phone or tablet by downloading the TuneIn app, or if you want, you can call directly into the show and listen directly on your phone by dialing 641-552-8117. When you do that, you dial directly into the show and you'll catch us live and you can take us on the go. Tonight's show, clients sharing their past life stories. And what I have is I have 3 clients that are going to be calling. And we're going to spend about 15-20 minutes with each client. And we're going to talk about their past life regression experience, what it was like before they went in, what their past life regressions were that they went through, and what it was like afterwards for them as well. And I have 3 very distinct clients. So I really look forward to this part of the show. That part of the show, it's going to start around 7:30 is when we'll have our first person on. But before we enter into that, I want to touch upon last week's show, because last week's show went deep down the rabbit hole, because it was about the spirituality of oneness. And what we had is we had a nuclear physicist and quantum theorist, Steve Parlin, on our program. And we talked about the idea of oneness and how it relates on the sciencey level so that we can start to equate to it on the spiritual level. And I got some feedback about the show, and one person's feedback was, my friend and I, we had to listen to it twice, and the second time we took some notes, because it was so full of information. Another one was, Jonathan, listening to your show for 2 hours is like reading 5 books. I like that one. That was really cool. The idea is this. There are some times these shows are so filled with information that they do carry a lot. And I get it. I have read books like that. There's a book like that. If you ever read it, it's called Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul. And it's about this woman. I mentioned, I think, in the very first program, I showed you the book, actually, in episode 1, when I talked about the books and some of the things that led me along to this journey of why I'm speaking to you now. This book about this woman who channeled this personality, this entity known as Seth, and read it. It's very wonderful. A housewife named Jane Roberts who had this incredible capacity. And you would read a couple of pages of this book, and you had to put it down because it was so filled with incredible insight and information. You had to process it before you could even go into the next page. And so sometimes these shows are like that. And last week's show perhaps was like that in many ways. Because when Steve and I were talking, we talked about what does science tell us about the physical nature of oneness. And then we're going to kind of make this much more simple in the way. But the first thing that I want to offer there is that science validates the idea that the universe itself operates as a field of oneness. And Steve brought up examples of how that operates. And you should listen because you'll really get a better sense of what that means based on the examples Steve gave. But the one thing that fascinated me about what Steve spoke of was this. It had to do with the idea of the Big Bang. And that the idea in the Big Bang is that, in the theory of the Big Bang, that all this, what we see, this entire universe, was so compacted. It was a pinpoint, a singularity, they call it. In that way, there was no space between anything. It was compact, solid, a unit, a oneness. And when it blew apart, this unit, this oneness, this tightly compacted space, time, energy, everything else that was compacted in that experience blew out. It blew out into this universe we see today. But science has a very funny, they find something very funny taking place. That the idea of space and time doesn't seem to operate on the macro level, meaning in the big universe picture. That the big universe still behaves like it's a compacted pinpoint. It behaves as a oneness. And so when you touch one part of the universe, instantaneously the entire universe is affected. And that's what we mean by the idea of a oneness. Now, he talked about bringing it down to the quantum level, which really helps us understand oneness at the nature of energy and how we are all actually not just separate from the field, but generated by it, and how we all not connected to each other, but literally different forms of each other, like fingers and toes on one body, two functions, two forms, one body. In that sense, that's the idea of taking the science of oneness and then looking at it as a spiritual phenomena. Because what does oneness tell us on the spiritual level? Well, on the spiritual level, oneness tells us about the relationship of life, our relationship with life, with each other, with everything that goes on in life. It is a oneness, thus everything is participating. To whatever end it is participating with us. Now for us, as we look at ourselves as souls, because this show has that bias, we see ourselves as souls being human. You know, I kind of question sometimes maybe we should be more spiritually activistic, activists. In that sense, where really the idea, the concept that we are souls being human, based on the work and what we discuss on this show and the work I do as a past life regression therapist, it is much more dynamic than life is allowing us to actually communicate to the world around us. So it is up to us to, so to speak, come out of the spiritual closet in relation to this concept, to this idea. And so when we view ourselves as souls living human lifetimes, the deeper part of that consideration is that you as a soul are here right now. You are in your human body. That you actually are the mind of your machine. That the spiritual consciousness of the soul is the driver of the vehicle, filtered through the human brain and body experience. But that in relation to your awareness as a soul, the first thing you have to identify is this idea of oneness that you are a part of, that you are generated by. And in that way, you can start to see your life around you, not through the sciencey lens of oneness, which is very cool. It validates what we understand spiritually as souls, spiritually in the experience in our relation to one another. If I'm in relation to you, and I am activated by you, either positively or negatively, but let's say negatively, you're not here to oppose me. You're here to participate, to help me see myself in a way that I can't see myself without your presence, without being activated by you. This oneness that we share is a oneness of intention as well, to help each other grow. That's what we do as souls. That's why we're in these human lives. That's why we take on these conditions. So they act as our challenges to make choice. And it's not just the choice you make. It's the mindset. It is the radiance of your mental and emotional presence when you do make choice that also matters. And the idea of oneness makes this so all-important. Because when we take this into deeper consideration, it's not just an energetic or a sciencey oneness that we are a part of. No, there's a divine experience to this oneness, and we are in relation to each other in that divine environment, that divine nature within the oneness that we exist as and within. So when Steve spoke of oneness, he helped us see the sciencey part of it. It was awesome to listen to. I encourage you to go back and to listen to that part. The entire interview. It was phenomenal as far as going deep. And you may have to pause, you may have to take your notes. And if you have questions, which I did receive from one person, then if you have questions, please send them forward. You can always text them to me at 617-875-6686, or you can contact me. That is a direct number to me with your questions. Or you can go to my website, jonathanyorks.com, and go to the contact page. So schedule a time to talk if you have any conversation that you want to have with me about questions that come up about these shows or about the work I do or perhaps coming in for services. So in relation to what we spoke of last week, the big aha of it all is that science validates what we understand spiritually speaking, that we are a oneness. And when we operate through that view, then we contextualize our experience. And we understand our relationship to life itself, to the events of our life, to the circumstances in which we find ourselves in, to the people in which we find ourselves around and around us, to the job in which we are working within, to the home in which you live, to the car in which you drive, if it goes to that even level for you, in the recognition that everything else is a reflection of your relationship to life. Nothing is opposing you. Nothing is trying to thwart your journey. Everything is a guidance. And when you view it in that way, now you're gaining the upper hand to life. Now you're starting to see through your spiritual eyes, and you're starting to think through your spiritual mind as a soul. So, little wrap up from last week. There was a question that someone had asked, and I'm just going to get this up on my computer, which doesn't want to seem to there you go. And now it's requiring me to type in a password, so I shall, and here I have the email with the question. It was from a listener of last week, and this is really a great question, and I thank you very much for the question, Mary Beth. And Mary Beth writes, we talked about, let me introduce this so for the people who didn't listen last week. When Steve talked about breaking energy down, all the particles, down to their fundamental form or expression, or maybe another word. He brings it down. We bring it down to a layer of vibrating strings. So everything, your atoms, are not actually atoms. They're vibrating strings that generate a field around it. So the field is the subatomic particle that this field is being generated. And so the idea is that these strings are, that all the atomic nature is a vibratory nature, that everything we see as a particle is actually a kind of a vibration, so going so quick, so fast that we see it as an actual form in that sense, at least as we conceptualize it. So life broken down to its energetic level, they see it at this point as a field of vibrating strings. Of course, where do the vibrating strings come from? Talk for another time, certainly. And so the question is this from this person who listened last week. Could the vibrating energy, the string wave, now what do you mean by wave? They're talking about a frequency wave. These vibrating strings are not only vibrations, they also generate frequencies, wave patterns from these vibrations. Could the vibrating energy, string wave, be the sound that creates all, including light and energy, which is in Destiny Souls, page 248, she believed, or made a question? Or could it be that sound has created the vibrating string wave? What a great question. And I will answer it this way. Because it is all oneness, I would have to believe that it is both the same. But in this sense, let's say we have infinite vibrating strings. What is the field that is generating the vibration of all these strings? Break it down, it must be a field that is vibrating itself. That kind of individuates within it strings that we call little vibrating strings. And is this overall vibration a vibration that we could call a sound? Well, a sound can't be separate from the vibration, from the frequency, and the frequency can't be separate from the sound. So whatever it is that generates maybe the effect, are these vibrating strings kind of an effect? Kind of the orchestra, so to speak, that makes up all the pieces that make up the orchestra, so to speak, that unify a field of sound, or the field of sound is made up of these little notes, is unified, these little notes that we call strings. Again, sound and vibration, I see it as all in the same oneness. And again, in oneness, nothing is separate from itself. Vibration and sound can't be separate from itself. Nothing within it can be separate. So, in that way, all the vibrating strings, the sound, I don't know. I think I'm going to go with that. There's a giant, a field. I can ask Steve to even comment on this, that the field itself is a unified field that generates the frequency, that generates the sound, that is also made up of distinctive little sounds, strings, so to speak. So, I don't know if that went too deep, but the idea within oneness is that the sound and the vibration, the frequency of that sound, cannot be separate from one another. they generate each other. It's just one is the same as I would comment on it. So that's my answer to that question. Now, as far as the next part of our show, let me introduce what we're going to be doing in the next part of our show. I'm going to be having clients come on, and they're going to talk about their past life stories. And what we're going to do is you're just going to have a conversation with these former clients. And I was very fortunate. When I put it out there, I wasn't certain how I was going to do it. And I got an incredible week I had this past week with a painter coming in and life and house and everything else and distractions that, of course, to take us from the times when we really seem to focus ourselves in other places. And so I sent out an email the other day. And I was really happy with the response I got from my former clients, because many of them were very willing to come on the show. Many of them didn't have the time this time, said, put me on the list, give me a little more time. And it's like, understood, of course. But many of them had said, yes, they would. And so the three I have on today are really unique in their own way. They had different experiences, different phenomena, but all in this under the same experience. And you'll see what I'm saying when I talk about that they're all unique in their journey, yet they all found a movement within themselves, a relationship to their past life regressions that really emphasized the experience as valid, because it affirmed something within their nature that they found to be valid as presented through the past life regression. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the general stuff, like, what's it like when you first went in? I mean, all that kind of information, because I want to kind of normalize this process for anybody who's thinking of doing a past life regression. We all are wondering, can we do this? I had my first past life regression, like I've mentioned in the first episode and other episodes. I had no idea if I was making this stuff up. I had no idea if I could do it. And yet, as I went through it, I was certainly conscious of myself, but I was very focused on what was going on in my mind. And as I stayed focused on my mind, this incredible story was coming out. And when I was asked questions about more detailed information, I just gave it, not knowing if it was valid or not. Listen to the very first episode, perhaps even the second one about past life regression itself. In those episodes, you'll hear that story of my journey, in my very first experience, in a past life regression. We all go through it. I tell my clients it's like getting on the bicycle for the first time. We're all a little shaky when we first get on the bicycle. But there are things that you will experience that are very common throughout the regression experience. And so these three people who've been very generous to offer their time and share their stories. For those of us who have had regressions and we listen to their stories and go, I identify with that. And for those who have not had them, to listen to them and see it is not an uncommon phenomena. We all have questions going in. I'm amazed at the answers that we have coming out. And that's the fun of the work I do, and that's the fun of past life regression work. Even if you're seeking healing and resolution, I am amazed. I'm amazed by the outcome and the effect of such a thing. That's why I do this work. That's why I no longer practice in the field of psychology traditionally. I'm licensed in the field out west in California, but I no longer work and practice in a traditional manner, in a conventional way, because of the work I do, because of the effect I've seen, because of what I've come to know as I've looked down this rabbit hole and tried to understand what the heck happens after we die. And if we are souls, what the heck is going on here so I can better function here? How does this thing operate? And if I'm here, how can I best operate in relation to what is operating around me? Last week was the spirituality of oneness that helps us, again, understand that relationship. Today, it's about clients' past life stories to help us understand or help us see that these stories, they exist within all of us. And when we go to these places, when we allow ourselves to move into this inner mind journey, the stories that come through our mind, in the end, we shake our heads saying, nah, I don't think I would have made that one up. It's very cool. And the fun part is I take my clients all the way through these past lives to the death scene. And we dialogue at those death scenes. And then I lift them up out of those bodies and they float in the scene of passing. And we dialogue about what they left with. And then I give them an expansion suggestion. I have them move into the higher self mind. And we talk about the lesson of the lifetime, what they learned, what's still left unfinished, and how they can best work with it, what they're doing, how is it operating in their life, and how they can best fulfill whatever it is that they're utilizing from that past life within their present life to fulfill the lesson of this present life that they are in. Okay, it's about 7:20 at this time. We were going to take a break around 7:25, but we're going to take it actually a little earlier. All righty? So we'll take this 5-minute break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little more. Our guest will be on around 7:30 or so. I look forward to it when you come back. By the way, if you do have to leave and you want to see this show, you can go to the my Facebook page and you'll see the recording in my video section at Jonathan York's MALMFTCHT. I'm downloading these on the Past Life Regression channel at my YouTube channel. I had the first 6 programs, first 6 episodes on there. The next ones will be on there shortly, and I'll be sending out an email blast when they're all on there. I'm still working to get this somehow in a podcast. And again, as I'm my own assistant, sometimes I have to get my assistant to do a little more. My assistant sometimes has to take his time to get to all the places he needs to get to finish the work he's doing, so I can do what I'm doing as like sitting here today talking about these things, these topics. If you want to call me or whatever, you can certainly go to my website, jonathanyorks.com, and you can contact me through my contact page with questions, with if you want to speak, schedule time to talk. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. If you have questions about the service, if you're thinking of coming in for some sessions, fantastic. I love speaking to people about the services I offer and how this works. You can go to jonathanyorks.com and you'll get to the contact page, or you can call me at 617-875-6686 anytime you want to get a hold of me. Okay, this is the Past Life Regression Radio Show. I'm Jonathan Yorks. Today, clients sharing their past life stories. We'll be back in 5 minutes with our first guest. Thank you.
Your computer seen better days? Is it always freezing and lagging? Are you constantly plagued with pop-ups and viruses? Are you not able to get any work done? You don't need a new computer, you need Phoenix Technology Support. With just one call to Phoenix Technology Support, you will never have to stress over the hassles of taking your computer to a repair shop again. Just leave your computer right where it is and let us come directly to you. Phoenix Technology Support has over 10 years of experience in the industry of customer support and IT solutions, and it's the best place for help with all of your home or business electronics. From gaming systems to tablet setups, smartphones to smart TVs, even business servers and emails. We will help set up or troubleshoot almost any technology in your home or office. So next time you think your technology is at the end of its life, have it rise from the ashes like a phoenix by calling Phoenix Technology Support at 617-658-3240. That's 617-658-3240, or go to www.phoenixtechboston.com.
I'm going to the hardware store.
Oh, will you pick up 800 lumen bulbs?
800 more flowers? The neighbors will think we're wacky.
Not flower bulbs, light bulbs.
Come on, Dad. Lumens tell you how bright the bulb is. We can replace our 60-watt bulbs with energy-saving bulbs that give off about 800 lumens.
So, we'll save money.
Right.
Got it. 800 lumens and more savings.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.
Aren't you tired of your plain white walls? Do you ever wonder why you feel uninspired at the office or feel like your home lacks character? It's always the same boring walls over and over again. Well, it's time for a change. Visit walldecore3d.com and order wall panels that will turn your walls into beautiful and extravagant looking accent walls. The 3D wall panels give an extra dimension and complement just about any room. Their current selection includes plant fiber wall paneling, MDF wood wall panels, mosaic real wood paneling, and thin slate stone veneer. Remember, that's walldecore3d.com. Order now and add some depth to your life.
Are you in need of stickers, be it for personal or business use? Then you need to go to stickeru.com right now. That's stickeryou.com. Sticker U is passionate about providing you and your business with the highest quality custom stickers, labels, decals, and iron-ons. They can even make you temporary tattoos. If you want to stick out from the competition, then you need Sticker U, as Sticker U provides the best platform in the world to create custom products that make you stick.
Have you always wanted to make your own podcast? Or had dreams of becoming the next social media influencer? Don't let office space and equipment be what gets between you and your dreams. New studio space is now available through the Go Network. The Go Network is a multimedia broadcast company that currently hosts live radio shows and podcasts. With microphones to fit all guests, the ability to video record interviews, a stage for band performances, and an editing suite to put your audio and video content to the next level. The Go Network will provide assistance with producing, editing, sponsorship outreach, marketing, and more. You can create the podcast or web series you want with the lower price tag. Visit our studio location in Norwood or our audio suite in Canton. For more information, call us at 857-445-0424 or email us at info@gonet.com. That's info@GEAUXNET.com.
If you're just hearing about Monk Therapeutic Air for the first time, it's a recyclable diffuser that promotes mood change and life-enhancing effects through our custom blends of essential oils in the ancient practice of aromatherapy. Monk is the simplest aromatherapy device in history. You don't have to know anything about essential oils. We do all that for you. Simply pick the way you want to feel, open your Monk, and breathe in as your Monk diffuses an eclectic blend of essential oils and wild plant extracts. Monk is available in 7 different blends, all of which are organic, natural, and free of nicotine, tobacco, or artificial chemicals. Visit monq.com to learn more.
These are the sounds of someone taking their eyes off the road. Texting while driving is more than distracting. It's dangerous. Do us all a favor. When you're on the road, stay off the phone. A message from CTIA, America's wireless companies, and the National Safety Council.
I'm Jonathan Yorks, and you're listening to the Past Life Regression Radio Show. Welcome back to the Past Life Regression Radio Show, where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. I'm Jonathan Yorks, and we have come into this segment of our program where we are now going to be talking with former clients. These are clients who have been willing to come on the show and share their past life stories. And I believe the first person is here, so I'm going to put on my headset as let's see, there we go. And I'm going to get myself going. And I have my headset on. And Dimitri and Ishion, yes. Hi.
Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Of course. It's my pleasure.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you again. So, folks, Nikki was a client of mine. She had come to see me many years ago. Nikki, about how many years ago you think that was?
I was going to say probably about 4.5 years ago or so, somewhere around there.
Gotcha. So Nikki came about 4.5 years ago. And Nikki, what brought you into my office for a past life regression?
Well, my husband, Steve, who was on your program actually last week, had worked with you and had just enthralled me with Michael Newton and your work and everything else. And so I'd done a lot of reading about Michael Newton's books, and I read the book that you were a part of, and it just really fascinated me. And I've always kind of had a little bit of an understanding about the fact that we're souls, even an understanding when I was very young about how lessons come into play with everything, and it seemed like it was the best step in my journey to kind of try and explore that. I found it so interesting.
That's awesome. So Nikki is one of those open-minded clients. Nikki came in, she had some background, she had an open mind. I think was Steve your boyfriend at the time? He wasn't your husband at the time, was he?
We were buying a house right around that time. So we were engaged. We were
you're engaged.
Right brother.
All righty. So now, Nikki, when you came in for your past life regression, tell me, Do you recall any assumptions you had or any thoughts or concerns you thought of before you actually came in for the session itself? About doing the past life regression, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I had a lot of excitement. I didn't quite know what to think. I think when you read a lot ahead of time, sometimes that can be a good thing, sometimes that can be a bad thing. I had visions of things being very vivid as far as my visions that I would see. So I did have some thoughts about going into it, but I do tend to be quite open-minded. So I was kind of just trying to see what happened and kind of rolling with the punches, per se.
I love those clients who come in open-minded, ready to roll with the moment. I love that. It makes my job so much easier. So, okay, Nikki, so let's talk about your past life regression. So let's, if you will, tell the audience, just give them an idea of who you were in that past life and the journey that you went on in that past life itself.
Yeah, so the interesting thing for me is that the quick history of me, I am a very feminine soul. I have always been very much of a girly girl. I have been wearing dresses since I was 2. My mom used to say that I would cry when I'd have to have pants put on me. I've always loved makeup and fashion and everything else. And in this regression, I found myself as a man, which was very interesting. And it was not at all what I was expecting. And it kind of took me back a little bit at first, as I was definitely not expecting that. And I found it to be the most interesting realization when you can see yourself as the other sex and it's you. And it's just the most eye-opening, most awakening experience I think that you could ever have. So,
I love that. You know what I love is that. I love that. And if I'm going to pause for a second, I love that, Vicky, because what I love, folks, is, you know, we all go in wondering, who am I going to be? What's it going to be? And perhaps you have something in your mind about what you may have been in a past life. So Nikki goes in, girly girl, dress girl, the whole bit, and she's a man. Tell us the kind of man you were, though, Nikki.
The interesting thing is I was actually a son of a satrap, which I believe. So I've done a little bit of research.
Great.
My husband's helped me with this. So essentially I was the son of somebody that basically was the undermining of a king of sorts. So we ran a bunch of people, and I lived in a palace of sorts, and I was the son of a very powerful man whom I really just didn't like because he was just not a nice person. He ruled with an iron fist and just was brutal in the ways that he treated people, and I was so petrified to become that. But I was very strong. I fought in many battles, which for me, it was just not something that I was ever attuned to as a person. I've never been an action movie person. I've never been into fighting, again, like very girly girl. So for me to experience something that was so different, but yet so close to me, it was amazing.
Let me ask you, was it visual for you? Did you see the imagery, or was it more kind of impressional for you when you went through it?
It was more impressional. I think when I came into the whole experience, I was hoping that it would be more visual, but I would almost get to, as I would describe, maybe like a flash of a scene, and then would get some sensations about what was happening around me in that time period.
Wonderful, yeah.
So it was more of an impression of what I was picking up on, more of a sensation, I would say.
Understood. You know, it's funny. People tell me flash of scenes, and that flash of scene leads to kind of a sense of a feeling of what's within that scene and what contextualizes, that scene. To me, it's like a bubble pops in my visual field. It's an impression of an image. It pops, and in that bubble, as long as the person is asking me questions, I will give you description about what popped in my mind, even though it may feel kind of fleeting for me. But as long as I do that, as long as I'm having that experience, I'm actually finding myself more immersed in it. And as I do that, I'm able to provide much more detail. So if you would, because you just described some really cool experiences in that life, what was the one scene in your past life as this young man that really stands out in your mind?
So I think the one that stands out and probably is the most impressionable upon myself is, again, because of my past and my being such a girly girl and not having watched lots of action drama movies or war movies or anything else, I just recall a scene of watching when my father was killed, when I was in the midst of this crazy battle and there were horses running and there were people fighting and there were swords slinging all around me, and it looked as though it was in slow motion, and it was every kind of movie that any person has probably watched of a war film slowed down, but it was me and I was there. And I've never thought about being any kind of a part of that. And I just remember watching my father get killed and just reacting and just having that immersive feeling, having that knowledge that I was there and being a part of it and being so enthralled in that moment was just absolutely unlike anything I'd ever experienced before.
So you could really feel yourself in that battle scene. You could feel yourself moving around and in that, having that experience?
Yes, I could feel the adrenaline. I could feel the power that came from me swinging that sword when I would never in this life ever picture being that person.
Can you see this in your mind as you describe it to me?
I totally can.
You know, folks, what I find incredible about these past life regressions is that they stick in our minds. And Nikki had about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, thereabouts. And even now, as she talks about it, it's clear within her mind. She doesn't have to force the imagery forward. It just, as she speaks of it, it automatically appears in her mind. It's like she can't mention the word or bring the thought up without the imagery and everything else within that imagery that she experienced in her past life regression. We call it stickability. And in memory work, we understand that when a memory is brought to conscious mind, it sticks. If it is fantasy, it fades. So, Nikki, can you see some of the armor and some of what people were wearing in this battle?
You know, I wish that I could recall exactly what it was, but I think I'm a very emotional person, so I think personally I was probably more focused on the emotion of experiencing what I was going through versus what I was watching. But I do think you said that you had listened, right? Okay. Did I say anything at that point in time? Do you remember?
I piecemealed through what I listened to. And I didn't come across that. I know I must have asked. I generally do. I'm going to go back and catch that because the question came to my mind. I know you can see somehow in your mind the imagery of were there breastplates, were they wearing, was it skirts, was it leggings, you know, the kind of uniforms and an impression of that in your mind, even if you didn't see it clearly. Do you have an impression of what was being worn or what you were wearing at that time?
Yeah, so I believe it was kind of a breasted armor plate that was being worn. And I do remember going through things, and my husband's amazing with history, and so it seems as though what we were able to piece together was like a pre-Alexander the Great kind of situation in possibly Damascus with the landscape that I remembered and everything else. And it's amazing. Like, I can still recall it, so by far, definitely not fantasy.
That's amazing. I love that stuff. Let me ask you, Nikki, at the end of your life, during that life, you made a big choice. If I recall, you made a big choice that changed the pattern of that life. Tell the audience what the choice you made as that young man.
So it does ring true to even some lessons that I think that I'm learning today. I was faced with the fact of that battle that I described as seeing my father pass away and be killed in that battle. And he, again, was a very brutal man. He was a tyrant, to say the least. And my biggest fear was becoming that. I didn't want to have the pressure of having to be that person. And I was so fearful. I was so afraid of having to have that pressure and have that expectation of being that person that I just absolutely wanted nothing to be like, that I left.
When you left,
whether it be good, whether it be bad, I ran away and I just said, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to be that person.
So you snuck away, or was it known that you were leaving?
It was very quiet. It was quiet in a way. I left quickly. I left very swiftly. But it was definitely not a known, claimed sort of position that I took at that point in time.
So basically you had to leave the environment in which you were part of this kingdom environment and the Greek environment in the Greek times. Let me ask you, where did you go? I mean, how did your life go from there? Because you left it at probably a youngish age in that life when your father died? Middle age? How old are you feel?
I would say probably like 16, 17 at that point in time.
Oh my gosh. You were young
yeah.
when you took off.
I was young.
Wow.
But again, like a lot of expectation. I felt that pressure. I felt that weight on my shoulders. And I don't know that was probably abnormal with the research that I've done with like the age range of what to be expected with things and all of that. So the pressure was definitely very big, but the funny thing is I will say to anybody that's listening right now that's doing regressions or looking into possibly doing them, the interesting part is that if you meet with Jonathan, you'll have him explain to you a different scene. So skip to the next most important scene sort of thing. So I will say after the battle scene, I didn't really get much after that point in time. So I can only assume that my life was pretty kosher after that point in time.
Understood.
And it was probably pretty normal. Yeah.
Well, where did you go
bad.
after the battle scene? Where did I take you? Did you go see a part of your life after that, after your choice to leave?
I left in a hurry, and the next scene that I remember was my death scene.
Oh, okay. So we took it. All right. And how old were you when you died in that life?
I don't know exactly, but I was definitely older. I was an old man, and I do believe I died of old age. It was nothing more dramatic than that by any means.
When you died in that life, let me ask you, can you see it in your mind, the death scene from that lifetime?
100%.
Where were you when you were dying in that life?
I was in our cottage on a cliffside. It was beautiful. It was a sunny day. I remember it well. I was in my bed, and my wife was at my feet, noticeably upset of the situation, but I passed away and floated above my body and watched her as she cried when I passed away. And I had a feeling of feeling bad, but I also felt a feeling of like readiness to go back home.
Understood.
Which is an interesting feeling.
It isn't it? Yeah. No, I hear you. Let me ask you, when you left that life, did you I understood you felt sadness, but did you feel like you had a good life, that you made a good choice when you chose not to follow in your father's footsteps?
I had a little bit of guilt, to be honest, because I did. When I chose to leave, what basically happened is that I knew this going into this. And obviously, like, pieced onto this when I was talking to you just now. But my little brother, would have then been responsible to take my place as I left.
Got you. Did you identify? Go ahead, please.
No. So I did have a little bit of regret with that. Yeah.
And that regret around that was what? That you left that, you imposed that upon your little brother?
Yes, who interestingly enough is the soul of my father in this life right now, who I'm incredibly close to.
Isn't that wonderful? I love that. And what's your relationship like with your father in this life?
I absolutely adore him. He's fantastic. He's one of my favorite people, and we get along famously. He's amazing.
So there must have been something within that life that you knew that you could entrust your brother to, even though you left. There must have been something in there. So now we're talk lesson, because folks, every time we go through a past life, not only are we living that life, we are taking on the human journey and the human characteristics and the human trauma and the drama and the choices, but it all leads to one point where I ask my clients about the lesson of the lifetime. So Nikki, if you can recall again, what was the lesson of the lifetime?
So I felt as though I was struggling a little bit with the lesson, but I do remember it basically coming down to me wanting to be able to be happy with myself and not having someone else make that choice for me, and not having to conform with what someone else has to say about what they want for me or who they expect me to be.
And that lesson was incredibly significant for that life, to choose the path that was authentic to who you are, regardless of circumstances. And the circumstances in that life that Nikki went through weren't circumstances where she thought to do harm to anyone. It wasn't about that. It wasn't like she had an ill intent towards her brother, ill intent towards society, ill intent towards anybody. So the choice that she made to go and leave everything had nothing to do with ill intent, which is a major difference in the karmic radiance of choice. Because in doing that, then what does it represent? Because I get it. Her brother, the kingdom, everything else will be affected. but it will still remain relatively stable because there were factors around that choice that Nikki made in that past life that allowed her to move, and actually things would not likely fall apart. She had to make this choice in that lifetime, faced with that karmic moment. Do I live authentic to me, or do I live according to others? So tell me, Nikki, how do you see that playing out in your present life?
I've found it to be very telling, to be completely honest with you. I have encompassed very similar situations in this life where I've had to make very difficult situations based off of what was best for me, what was best for my family, what's best for my journey in this life right now. And I do find that it's a very telling lesson that has helped me immensely be the type of person that I am today, which I'm eternally grateful for.
So in that way, did you find this past life regression more affirming of your journey, more of a guidance, more of a healing or resolution kind of experience? What was it more for you?
I think I found it very interesting because there have been struggles that I've gone through that I've often wondered if I'm strong enough to encounter. And just seeing that there have been lives in the past that I've done this, and like I am that person, and that does have relevance with like why I'm here and what I'm going through. It is so telling that would have come to me in this life as kind of a knowledge that I am strong enough to do that, despite whatever kingdom I have behind me that might be depending on me. I have the strength within myself to make the right decision.
I love it. The kingdom isn't the land. The kingdom has gotten a little more intimate around you. I appreciate that. Exactly. But as I listened to you, and as you were just mentioning, and you were commenting on, on how this has been not just affirming and validating, but you've seen it as a strength. And folks, a few weeks ago, I talked about the lessons of souls, and I talked about when you learn a lesson from a past life in that lifetime, then you carry it as a strength in the next lifetime, and that's as an attribute of strength. And that's what happened for Nikki. She was successful in that life. She made a choice that was incredibly difficult, going against all the nature and culture and society and expectations of that time and that period of that persona she was. And now she finds herself a female in the lifetime, confronted with some very significant personal choice making. That was all about the kingdom, so to speak, but also about her desire to live a life that is true to her person. And Nikki has done that, which is awesome. So, Nikki, let me ask you one last question about that, about your past life regression. Mm-hmm. As you experienced it, now, many years later, how do you see it in your life? Its meaning or its relevance?
I think I can't wait to do another one with you. I'll start off with that. And I think it's been so eye-opening in so many ways. And it really does give you the strength to realize either what's working for you, what's working against you. And I really think that it gives you a good platform to be able to realize where you're at. It gives you a gauge of who you are, and not just in this life, but in other lives as well. And I think that greater understanding has just been unmeasurable with its benefits that it's allowed for me.
Oh, Nikki. Well, folks, I did not pay her to say that. I tell you right now, that's all from her genuine person. Thank you, Nikki. I thank you so much for doing this with me. Folks, Nikki, thank you again. Folks, that was awesome. I so much appreciate Nikki being on the show. That was just so enlightening. I hadn't spoken to Nikki about her past life regression until I put out the request for her to, for people to be on the show. And so when she said that, she's emailed back or volunteered to do it through a text, and I was like, okay, cool, all right, that'll be awesome. Man, I haven't spoken about her past. I've spoken to Nikki, but not her past life regression. And I'm amazed. I'm amazed. We're talking 4+ years later. Now, at that time, certainly there were things that she had already gone through in her life. And, the idea is in the very first past life regression, we go to life that is most important for your session that day. What you as a soul want you as the person that you are to know about your life in that very, very moment. Just taking off the headphones as I now talk with you. And when we do that, I'm amazed at the places people go. Now, Nikki, a girly girl, and I know Nikki. I know how she dresses. I know how she values her feminine nature and how she expresses her feminine nature and as such. And yet for her to go back as a man, it's like, what? Wait a second. Not only that, a warrior man, someone who has fought. And I'll tell you right now, this soul in this lifetime has had to be a warrior in her own right. So I applaud the nature that she has brought through lifetimes and the choices that she has made, because it certainly has been incredibly opportunistic, incredibly a part of her nature in this life that has allowed her to grow through moments that she had to make choice. And in those moments of choice, she was able to garner the strength from her past life as that warrior during the times of the early, probably Hellenistic Greek movement. Okay, it is 7:51 in this moment. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take another break, actually, okay? We'll be off in 5 minutes. We'll have our next guest on the program. It'll be the same and more. I appreciate it very much. We'll see you in about 5 minutes. This is the Past Life Regression Radio Show. I am Jonathan Yorks. See you in a few. Thank you.
I'm going to the hardware store.
Oh, will you pick up 800 lumen bulbs?
800 more flowers? The neighbors will think we're wacky.
Not flower bulbs, light bulbs.
Come on, Dad. Lumens tell you how bright the bulb is. We can replace our 60-watt bulbs with energy-saving bulbs that give off about 800 lumens.
So, we'll save money.
Right.
Got it. 800 lumens and more savings.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
Aren't you tired of your plain white walls? Do you ever wonder why you feel uninspired at the office or feel like your home lacks character? It's always the same boring walls over and over again. Well, it's time for a change. Visit walldecor3d.com and order wall panels that will turn your walls into beautiful and extravagant looking accent walls. The 3D wall panels give an extra dimension and complement just about any room. Their current selection includes plant fiber wall paneling, MDF wood wall panels, mosaic real wood paneling, and thin slate stone veneer. Remember, that's walldecor3d.com. Order now and add some depth to your life.
These are the sounds of someone taking their eyes off the road. Texting while driving is more than distracting. It's dangerous. Do us all a favor. When you're on the road, stay off the phone. A message from CTIA, America's wireless companies, and the National Safety Council.
Have you always wanted to make your own podcast? Or had dreams of becoming the next social media influencer? Don't let office space and equipment be what gets between you and your dreams. New studio space is now available through the Go Network. The Go Network is a multimedia broadcast company that currently hosts live radio shows and podcasts, with microphones to fit all guests, the ability to video record interviews, a stage for band performances, and an editing suite to put your audio and video content to the next level. The Go Network will provide assistance with producing, editing, sponsorship outreach, marketing, and more. You can create the podcast or web series you want with the lower price tag. Visit our studio location in Norwood or our audio suite in Canton. For more information, call us at 857-445-0424 or email us at info@gonet.com. That's info@GEAUXNET.com.
If you're just hearing about Monk Therapeutic Air for the first time, it's a recyclable diffuser that promotes mood change and life-enhancing effects through our custom blends of essential oils and the ancient practice of aromatherapy. Monk is the simplest aromatherapy device in history. You don't have to know anything about essential oils. We do all that for you. Simply pick the way you want to feel, open your Monk, and breathe in as your Monk diffuses an eclectic blend of essential oils and wild plant extracts. Monk is available in 7 different blends, all of which are organic, natural, and free of nicotine, tobacco, or artificial chemicals. Visit monq.com to learn more.
Has your computer seen better days? Is it always freezing and lagging? Are you constantly plagued with pop-ups and viruses? Are you not able to get any work done? You don't need a new computer. You need Phoenix Technology Support. With just one call to Phoenix Technology Support, you will never have to stress over the hassles of taking your computer to a repair shop again. Just leave your computer right where it is and let us come directly to you. Phoenix Technology Support has over 10 years of experience in the industry of customer support and IT solutions, and it's the best place for help with all of your home or business electronics. From gaming systems to tablet setups, smartphones to smart TVs, even business servers and emails. We will help set up or troubleshoot almost any technology in your home or office. So next time you think your technology is at the end of its life, have it rise from the ashes like a phoenix by calling Phoenix Technology Support at 617-658-3240. That's 617-658-3240, or go to www.phoenixtechboston.com.
Are you in need of stickers, be it for personal or business use? Then you need to go to stickeryou.com right now. That's stickeryou.com. Sticker U is passionate about providing you and your business with the highest quality custom stickers, labels, decals, and iron-ons. They can even make you temporary tattoos. If you want to stick out from the competition, then you need Sticker U, as Sticker U provides the best platform in the world to create custom products that make you stick.
I'm Jonathan Yorks, and you're listening to the Past Life Regression Radio Show. Welcome back to the Past Life Regression Radio Show, where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. I'm Jonathan Yorks, your host over the next 2 hour thereabouts still of the program. We have just had a guest on, Nikki. Nikki was so kind to share her past life story, and that's what we're doing today. Clients sharing their past life stories. And I have the next person on the air. I'm going to put on my headphones. And my next guest is Michael. Hey, Michael.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much, Michael, for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome.
And as you know, Michael, we're talking about our past life regression experiences. And so to begin the conversation, what I do is I'm just curious, what brought you in for the past life regression in the first place?
Actually, my wife bought it as a Christmas present.
That's right. That's an awesome gift, by the way. And I encourage everybody out there to do such things for people out there in your life. Buy them a past life regression for a Christmas gift. That's awesome. Or any kind of holiday gift, birthday gift, Father's Day. Sunday is a good day to buy a gift for somebody as a holiday gift. So that was awesome. So she bought you this, and now were you looking forward to this? Is this something you've always wanted to do, or is it something that was just kind of, fun? Just a kind of a fun thing to kind of throw out there?
Well, I honestly never knew what would occur because I was totally new to it. I didn't have any previous insight as to what would happen. And she knew that I was curious about, different things, past life and stuff to see, if it was true or not. And so she decided to get the Christmas gift, and I went in to do it without any, preconceived ideas of this is going to happen or this is going to happen. It just happened.
Wonderful. See, now this is a whole different client. Now, Michael came in. You hadn't read any books, had you, or anything like that?
No, I had no idea. I was walked in blind, I'll be honest.
Man, I love that. So now, I have my clients like Nikki who come in who are open and predisposed to the information and what they and readings of the stuff. And I have clients like Michael who come in, have no background in this whatsoever. So let's get to it. So you come into my office, you're going to have the past life regression. Before you actually sit down and we do the regression itself, were you having any thoughts about, what it would be, or if you could do it at all, anything like that?
That was my first thought, I'll be honest. My first thought was being in the field that I'm in technology, so everything is very concrete.
Right.
It is very real, and I can touch it and I can analyze it.
Right.
And this was a realm that I was going to go into that I was I was kind of not sure if it was ever going to happen because I never did it before. So there's a part of me that had doubt. Could I be hypnotized? I never was hypnotized before.
Right on.
Could I be hypnotized? Could I see something? Could I feel something that I never felt before?
Right on. So once again, perfect. Person comes in, has no idea. Can I do it? Will it happen? No expectations, but full of anticipation. So
exactly.
Let's get into it, Michael. Now, your journey, Michael was a client. When we went through it, we went through various experiences until we finally kind of formed into a kind of past life moment for you. So if you would, share what you remember about your past life regression.
Well, when I first went into it, I saw myself sitting over this kind of like ring of fire, and it was very olden times.
Yeah.
And I almost had a crown on my head or something. I couldn't tell what it was, but I was actually standing over this whirlpool of fire, and I had no idea what it was.
Right on. And
so,
go on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, please. No, please.
So after in that for a few moments, that's the part that kind of kicked it off. Like, wow, something is happening. And I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but I don't think I could imagine what was occurring in my head or the thoughts that were going through my head.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine if I wanted to imagine. So that was the first spark of, wow, okay, let it go. Let's see what's going to happen.
Awesome. If I remember correctly, you had a red robe on at that time.
Yeah, exactly. It was a red robe. And when I tried to query it afterwards to see, what exactly after the meeting with you,
sure.
It was almost like in an ancient Sumerian times.
Oh, beautiful.
Because I was looking for the crown because it was such a strange crown. It wasn't like a regular king crown. It was it was a round circle, but it had like jagged edges, almost very archaic. Right. And I was inquisitive as to what exactly was that because I've never seen that before in my life.
Right.
And it wasn't until I tried Google search for different types of crowns, and I must look for 10, 15 minutes, and then I saw a crown, and I went, "That's it."
That's great.
I said, "That's what I saw."
That's so cool.
And then I look it up, and it's like ancient Sumerian. I'm like, whoa, how in the world did I see this?
That's beautiful.
So that was the first moment that started it. Right. And then we started to go further.
Right on. So now this is the fascination. Michael comes in, has no understanding, no expectations, yet full of anticipation, goes into it, and then he finds himself as you were a male in that moment, doing some sort of something with that whirlpool of fire, so to speak, and you have this in your mind. You can see this in your mind right now, can't you?
Yeah, it was like I was standing over it, and I was not afraid of falling into it, but it's almost like I had my arms outstretched, wrapped around it, kind of controlling it, but unsure of what I was actually doing.
Understood. And again, what I love about this is all coming through without any kind of understanding of what's taking place, just reporting to me what was taking place in his mind. And then we come across this crown. And I love when this happens. This is the best part of the past life regression work. When people find these icons, these elements in their past lives somewhere in antiquity or somewhere in a prior place, and it's like, nah, I didn't know this. Was this in your knowledge base? Did you have anything like this crown in your mind?
No, I had to Google it because I love medieval stuff, and so I thought, well, that doesn't look like a medieval crown. I don't know what's on my head, and it was just that symbol that I just wanted to find out. It wasn't until I Google searched it, and I saw on the images for crowns, and then I saw the person, and I saw the robe, and I'm like, oh my God, that's it.
Right on.
And I was fascinated. But that wasn't even the best part is when we started actually driving down was I think that opened up something in me that said, okay, let's go on this ride. Right. Let's see where this takes us.
Okay.
And then the second part was I saw myself as a woman.
Yes.
And it was like either in China or Japan or something like that because it was Oriental.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed myself, I was at an opening at a clearing, and I knew that I was going to get killed.
Mm.
And I started getting extremely emotional, and I had no idea what this was, but I could see myself, and I could see the person above me. It was almost like kind of like a samurai like kind of dress. That's all I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could almost feel his sword coming down, and then it went black. But as soon as it went black, all of a sudden, I was another individual, kind of like in the sky, looking down, this energy, looking down, trying to reach this poor girl to give her comfort. And as soon as the sword came down on her head, I immediately turned into a giant snake.
That's
it was
right.
the strangest thing, and I was just trying to help this poor girl, and I was crying in the session because I was so emotional. I could feel it, and I'm like, why am I feeling this to this extent?
Right. You know, people. Thank you. That's awesome. You know, people there are different layers, different feelings of immersion when people do past life regressions. When people are feeling the feelings deeply, we call it affectively charged. You're deep. You're at that point, you're one step away from dissociation and taking on the personality of that past life persona. So that's a very deep level of immersion. Now, the snake, I thought about that, Michael, and I realized something. I came across a picture of this psychic, and the picture showed this psychic lying down. It was a gentleman by the name of Louis Orr. And I think it was Louis Orr, and it showed this white spiral coming out of his body as he was because he could leave his body as he was leaving his body, an out of body experience. And when I hear this snake version afterwards, looking down, I'm thinking of that spiral, that wisp of energy, seemingly as souls that. Not all soul leaves in their human form. From what I've seen, I have seen this spiral of energy. That's
what it felt like, because afterwards, when I looked at it, it was kind of almost like a chi energy, and it was, but it was this knowledge. I don't know where this knowledge came. It was a knowledge that knew what was going on, and it was a very loving force trying to help this person, trying to give her comfort. And it affected me so much because I didn't know if I was reaching her, and I just wanted to reach her to help her.
Understood. Let me ask you, in that first thing, wow, and that past life of that Asian woman, tell me one of the scenes. Of course, the death scene was incredibly significant, and as you're there in this moment and you describe that death scene, you see it in your mind.
Yeah, and then it wasn't really until we even went further when you asked me to step out of this for a minute and try to go back a little bit more.
Right.
And then I saw myself scrubbing the floors. I was that same girl, probably teenager to 20, and I was scrubbing the floors. And as I'm talking to you, I feel the floor. It's like a concrete, but not a concrete. It's like an ancient stones. And I was scrubbing the floors, and here I am scrubbing the floors, and these other girls are asking me, okay, we got to go. And I'm like, I'm trying to hurry up. And I said, I just got to finish doing this chore to do this. And I could feel the floors in my hand. I could feel the rag. And we had that discussion about that.
Yeah.
And then you asked, well, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm getting ready to go. And you say, well, where are you going to go? And I said, I'm going to go to the market. And there I was in this marketplace with the three girls. And then all of a sudden I felt somebody grabbed me and they put me in this cart. It was like an oxen cart. And that was the prelude to me going to that field. And I could feel my hands grabbing the cart, and there was like hay in it. And I was so scared because I couldn't get out. That person took me captive, and I couldn't escape, and I knew what was going to happen, but I couldn't get out. But the amazing part was to feel the texture of the stone, to feel the wood of the cart, to feel myself in there, to feel myself constrained in this cart-like thing.
That's amazing. Again, it just points to the immersion that Michael was going through, to feel the visceral, the sensorial experience around him, the touch of things and the binding that had him bound up when he was on that cart. Do you know why, Michael? I don't recall that, but do you remember why you were being placed and why you were being executed? Do you have any recall or any sense of what it was?
No, except it wasn't until after that, then we went into another place, and I could feel myself as being a child, and I was laying in a bed and I was looking up, and it was almost like having some sort of psychic ability or something. And then I felt somebody above me, kind of like they were going to kill me, and I just turned into a white light, and I was gone. Wow. It's like, I don't know if that's when I died or what, but there was several patterns that pointed to I would be punished if I displayed any ability. And that was a thread that was common throughout the next 3 or 4 things that happened during that same session.
Right.
Because in that session, all of a sudden, that stopped. It was very strange. It was like these things happen, and all of a sudden they stop, and I'd be somewhere else, and I couldn't stop it. I was just turning into different people.
Right.
And so another person I turned into was I was on a hill, and I was overlooking on this mound. I could see some people looking at me, and as I was looking, I could see this black bird looking at me.
Yeah, I remember.
Knowing he was going to kill me. And I'm looking at the wolf, and I'm talking to the wolf, and I'm telling the wolf, it's okay, it's okay. Do what you need to do. It'll be okay.
That's great. Hold right there. Describe to the audience the people that were there with you, what they were wearing.
So I went forward a few more centuries because it felt like it was like the 12th, 13th, 14th century. They were standing on a hill. It was like a mound, and I could see the grass, and I could see there was like 5 or 6 of them standing there. And it was almost like I was being sacrificed or something, because I was like, I knew I was a human, and I knew the wolf was there, but it didn't make any sense. How could I talk to this wolf? How could I communicate without talking? It was like a telepathic-like communication, knowing that was going to occur. And I'm looking at this wolf's eyes, and it was the strangest thing.
Now, the men that were there were dressed in kind of conquistador or kind of like a Christian
like
Knights Templar kind of
like robes, and and it was.
And you saw a white cross with was it gold around it, I believe you said.
Yes, that also.
I looked that up. I looked that up. Now, nothing has ever been identified, but they certainly have found it in the annals of the movement of the Crusades. They have found such an emblem back in that time. So it would not be now. When you were that person in the cave, were you like these men, or did you feel something that you were somebody different?
No, I was. There were some sort of royalty or some sort of upper class, and I was felt like a peasant or something like that.
Got you. So here you are, and for whatever reason, you're being used. Were they amused by this, or did they seem
Yeah, they were watching. It was like they knew what was going on. They had this planned out, and they knew what they were doing, and I felt they knew what they were doing, and I felt like a victim. But I saw the wolf, and in the wolf, I knew that it was just a wolf, and it's okay, because that's by his nature what he's going to do.
Right.
And I had to accept it.
So
and I reached a point of acceptance, and then told him it's okay.
So here
and then
you
it went
are.
black again.
Understood. So here you are, these various lifetimes, all pointing to something within your journey. Now, folks, this happens sometimes. People sometimes spontaneously move through lifetimes. Generally speaking, when I do a past life regression with people, I'm taking them through one lifetime, the most significant for that session that day. But sometimes I have souls that come in who bounce around, who go to different lives. And then what we can do is we can see the pattern. Now, what Michael identified is he senses that in each one of those lives, there was an ability he had that was either a threat or was somehow used against him. And in that moment, he has not. In those lifetimes, there seems to be this common theme. After the wolf life, did we go anywhere else after that?
Yeah, then I actually became flowers. I remember laughing with you about this, because I was like, okay, this is one crazy ride. I was actually flowers, and I was looking at a deer, and I was talking to this deer, but I was like. You think of it like in a meadow, like those tiny little flowers that are like 3 or 4 inches long, and they're all bright colors. And I was that, and the deer was looking down at me, and I'm like, and I was laughing with you. How can I be flowers? How can I not be of human form? But I felt it, and I was it. It wasn't an imaginary thing. I was it at that moment.
That's a while.
So
that's a while. It doesn't happen very often.
It was strange to be a non-human form and to know it.
What we understand as souls, folks, is this. We can actually engage in the consciousness of other life forms. Flowers, animals, trees, grass, anything that is a life form. We can share within their consciousness and gain that relationship. Michael's not the first person who's told me how they've engaged within another life form, not as that life form, but sharing in the experience of what that life form would be experiencing and engaging with its consciousness. And in that way, you kind of gain this first-person perspective of what that life form is experiencing itself. So that's when I hear this experience from Michael, I'm like, oh, he's one of those souls. Okay, I gotcha. Michael, at all these scenes you described, can you see them in your mind as you've described them?
Yeah, and especially then towards the end part of it was all of a sudden, I was in this like hut, and the only thing I could describe it as is like, you know how Indians in like the 16th, 17th century had those smoke huts, and they would smoke in there, you know, and it would be like a hothouse, kind of like a hothouse. I could see the wood, and it was round, and it was a dome, and I could see the frame in my mind right now holding it up, and it was like bark or wood or something, and I was sitting there, and there was an Indian sitting next to me, and he started talking to me, and I started laughing to you. Because you said, you asked me to describe, and I described it. I said, there's an Indian guy next to me, and I don't know what he's doing, and I'm sitting on this bench with him, and we're inside this wooden structure, looks like a hothouse, and you go, well, what's he saying to you? And I went, blah, 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 blah. And he went, what? I said, I don't know what he's saying. He's talking to me in some Indian language, and I don't understand him. And you're laughing, and I'm laughing, and you're saying, it's okay. He's talking to you because he knows you understand. I said, but I don't understand. He said, well, you said try to understand. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I understood that language, and I was talking to him.
And what would you remember? Do you recall what was being exchanged between you and him?
Yeah, I was asking him, I'm like, why are you talking to me? Why are you showing me this? What do you want to show me? And all of a sudden, I saw this giant image of like a circle, kind of like those things, those dream catchers.
Right.
And one half was a wolf and one half was an eagle. And I'm looking at it. And we're like, well, why are you showing me this? And he was saying, because you need to know this. And I'm going, need to know what? He goes, this is the circle of life. This is how it works. It's okay. This goes this way and this goes this way. And I was just like, okay. And but it had true meaning at that moment because I was actually communicating. And I understood in my head clearly what he was saying. I just was unsure why I was there.
Understood. You know, to me, folks, when I hear this part of Michael's journey, one or two things are taking place. Either one, he's in a Native American life, and it sounds like he was making progressions from this kind of very primitive Sumerian life, perhaps, all the way through as we were moving through these lifetimes. And perhaps we stopped at a native life. Or two, he was actually experiencing perhaps an interaction with his guide. Based on, he could have been in the interlife in that moment, so to speak, because he had died through a number of lifetimes. Now he finds himself here, and by being shown this dream catcher-looking piece with a half wolf, half eagle look. Now let me ask you, the wolf eagle look, did it seem like it was woven into the dream catcher piece, or did it seem like more like a hologram within it?
It was kind of both. It was kind of woven, like I could actually see that it was solid, but it was also kind of, it was like moving. It was almost like energetic, and I just never. I tried to Google. I tried to look so hard to find, but I couldn't find another image like that.
Gotcha.
But as I was in there and I was talking to him, all of a sudden, I was in this giant temple, this Indian temple, not Native American, but Indian as in Indian,
Eastern India,
Indonesia. Exactly. I was in this giant temple, and I'm looking up, and it's so beautiful and gorgeous. And I'm looking around, and all of a sudden I start seeing all these energy and all these lights bouncing around, and I could almost see like a Shiva-like form, and it was incredible.
And the audience, as you're listening, folks, I mean, you can tell as Michael's talking about this, he sees this in his mind. He's actually re-experiencing it as he's talking to me, and it's actually he's like recalling the recall experience. Michael, at the end of it all, though, at the end of our time together, when we went through that journey, what realization did you gain? What did you understand? How it all fit into your life?
I think the biggest thing was I accepted, and I not only accepted, but I believed that we are a much larger piece than what we believe we are. And we are a collection. I guess if I had to put in an analogy, think of it as like an ocean, and every droplet doesn't really matter. If you get a cup of water, you can drink that, and that matters a little. But if every soul is a drop of water in the ocean collectively is that life force that's around us.
That's awesome. Now, before the regression, where was your mind at around all this sort of stuff? This, the realizations, before the realizations were gained?
Well, I've always been kind of spiritual and very metaphysical, but I never had the imagery to match it. And all of a sudden, now I have imagery, and now not just the imagery, but I don't have affirmation. After this, I had affirmation. Now I know. Now I don't just think and hope. I know.
That's awesome.
And that's a different when somebody tells you something and you say, well, I know. There's always a part of you that says, well, I know, but I'm not really sure. That's different. When you see this and you experience this, you know from some sort of higher source, I don't know what it is, but you know, and nobody can tell you different because you just know, and it's the most solid no in your life.
Man, I get it. I get it. And that is awesome to have that outcome. Because, folks, when you have that outcome, there's a quality of harmonization that takes place. Was that, kind of a peace that enters in. Was that fair to say? That there's some sort of existential anxiety that seems to be altered.
And it actually makes you like a little kid in a candy store because you want to go back and you want more.
Michael, thank you so much. And that was awesome. I so much appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with the audience your past life regression story. That was
you're very welcome. I'll definitely got to make another visit with you here in the next few months.
I look forward to it, man. Thank you so much ever again. I do appreciate it, folks. That was my client, Michael, and he shared his incredible past life regression story. And as you can see, he went through a series of lifetimes. It happens. Man, sometimes people enter these past lives and they enter into the death scene. I don't know they're in the death scene until I finally find out, oh, wait a minute, they're in a war. They've just been shot. And I'll ask, is this your last day of your life? Like I asked Michael when he was going through one of his, when he was the woman in the field. And I asked him if it was the last day of a life. Then I paused him and I brought him back early in lifetime so we can get some further context about that journey, that lifetime that he was as that young Asian woman who was killed. And then it's funny when you see these things through lifetimes. If you have a series of lifetimes to compare things to, like in just one session, I do that. I call them timeline sessions. I don't do it in the first session because I want the person to get used to riding the bicycle before we go into such places. But I call them timeline sessions. And those timeline sessions will track back through lifetimes a condition that you've carried all the way back to an origin, or we'll start from the origin and see how it is played out through lifetimes till we get to the present life. It's an amazing journey, these timeline journeys and these regressions. But in Michael's case, he went through lifetime to lifetime popping. Every time he went in, he would die and he would find himself popping somewhere else in another lifetime. Now, we don't just pop from lifetime to lifetime. There is an afterlife. Michael did not spontaneously go to the afterlife, and I'm glad because that's a whole nother session and much more involvement. So I do see at times when we suggest to the subconscious mind to only visit past lives, there are some people who do bounce through past lives. And when they do, we can start to see the stream, the thread of the lifetime, of the karma, so to speak. Yeah, the karma. The energies, the conditions that have operated through those lifetimes and how they have affected the present life and what they mean for growing in the present lifetime. So that was my guy, Michael. And I'm waiting to see if my next person's going to be on the phone at this time. Not there yet. Okay. We are waiting for our last person. He's going to be on shortly. So let me do this. No? Okay. Let's do this, folks. Let's take a break, and we're going to get our last guest for the evening. This one's worth listening to. I'm amazed by the man's journey, and I recommend you sticking around for this one. So we're the Past Life Regression Radio Show, streaming here at the Go Network at GoNet.com. I'm Jonathan Yorks. We'll see you in about 5 minutes when we'll have our next guest ready for the show. Thank you.
I'm going to the hardware store.
Oh, will you pick up 800 lumen bulbs?
800 more flowers? The neighbors will think we're wacky.
Not flower bulbs, light bulbs.
Come on, Dad. Lumens tell you how bright the bulb is. We can replace our 60-watt bulbs with energy-saving bulbs that give off about 800 lumens.
So, we'll save money.
Right.
Got it. 800 lumens and more savings.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
These are the sounds of someone taking their eyes off the road. Texting while driving is more than distracting. It's dangerous. Do us all a favor. When you're on the road, stay off the phone. A message from CTIA, America's wireless companies, and the National Safety Council.
If you're just hearing about Monk Therapeutic Air for the first time, it's a recyclable diffuser that promotes mood change and life-enhancing effects through our custom blends of essential oils and the ancient practice of aromatherapy. Monk is the simplest aromatherapy device in history. You don't have to know anything about essential oils. We do all that for you. Simply pick the way you want to feel, open your Monk, and breathe in as your Monk diffuses an eclectic blend of essential oils and wild plant extracts. Monk is available in 7 different blends, all of which are organic, natural, and free of nicotine, tobacco, or artificial chemicals. Visit monq.com to learn more.
Have you always wanted to make your own podcast? Or had dreams of becoming the next social media influencer? Don't let office space and equipment be what gets between you and your dreams. New studio space is now available through the Go Network. The Go Network is a multimedia broadcast company that currently hosts live radio shows and podcasts. With microphones to fit all guests, the ability to video record interviews, a stage for band performances, and an editing suite to put your audio and video content to the next level. The Go Network will provide assistance with producing, editing, sponsorship outreach, marketing, and more. You can create the podcast or web series you want with the lower price tag. Visit our studio location in Norwood or our audio suite in Canton. For more information, call us at 857-445-0424 or email us at info@gonet.com. That's info@geauxnet.com.
I'm Jonathan Yorks, and you're listening to the Past Life Regression Radio Show. Life Regression Radio Show, where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. I'm Jonathan Yorks. We've come into the last segment and our last guest for today's show of clients sharing their past life stories. We just had Michael on and we had Nikki on before then. Nikki came on the show with a lot of background, a lot of insight, and a lot of opening to do her past life regression. Michael came in with none of that whatsoever. Each experienced their own unique journey, and yet each found purpose and meaning at the end and how it applied to their lives. You know, the one thing I want to remind you all, the work I do is spiritual existentialism. What I'm doing is when I work with clients through the idea that you are a soul being human, is I look at your spiritual journey as a soul. We look for what the meaning is and the value of, we look for what the conditions are and the meaning behind those conditions so that you can better gain insights and understanding about the journey you are on now. And I'm amazed at how people find this so relevant to themselves and their journey, their person, how it meets them at the core. So I am going to now invite our last guest onto the show. It's Bob. Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for being on the show, Bob.
No problem.
I appreciate it. Bob was a client of mine. How many years ago, Bob, did we do our work together?
4 or 5-ish, something like that.
All right, great. And tell me, Bob, when you came in for your regression, what was on your mind when you came in? How come you came in for the work?
Well, there's a little bit of a background story. If you get a few minutes, I can share that with you and your audience.
Yes.
When I, growing up in life, I was your typical male, and have your job, get your family, do all that kind of stuff. But as you're going through that, I realized that I had pretty much no direction. I mean, I grew up Catholic, and I deal with that. But even when I was going to church, I'm sitting there going, "There's got to be more." You know what I mean? This just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So there was a lot of, I guess, little dots that kind of went out there, and I was just putting them out there and not really paying much attention to them because I had no connection to it.
Yeah.
And then probably like 8 years ago, I got cancer, which wasn't fun. But while I was going through my chemo treatments, there were like 5-hour-long sessions, and then I'd get home, and anybody that has experienced anything like that know that, you don't feel good, and, and all that kind of stuff. And so I sit there with my hood on, and I just kind of, I don't know, sit there because I have nothing better to do.
Right.
So as I'm going through that, I'm starting to realize that I don't know if I had forced meditation going on at that time or whatever, but I'm starting to connect with things that I've never really connected with before. And so I had multiple weeks of that. And when it all said and done, fortunately, everything came out fine. But then I had this big, what was all that about? Not the cancer treatment part of it, but what was I hearing? What was I experiencing? All that kind of stuff. And I've had friends that had been in tune with other things before, and I never really got it. So it's hard to have conversations with them about it.
So let me ask you, before you go further into your story,
go
you're going through your cancer treatments, and you're now going into this meditation kind of process during these treatments, and you're gaining what? You're hearing things, you're experiencing things?
Yeah, I'm kind of hearing voices. I'm kind of getting some direction that I've never had before, but not knowing anything about it, I couldn't process it. I'm just kind of curious as to, what was all that going on? I could tell it was something spiritual, something, not as concrete as people like to have things, put it that way. So I was really having a hard time evaluating what was actually going on. So as I was now sitting there for the next couple of months, still trying to figure out what's happening, I had books that were kind of coming past me, and I'm reading these books. So Conversation with God, and
that's a good one.
Journey of Souls, and all the, probably the typical books that people, when they first start figuring out what's going on, will read. And then I came across this book about case studies where different people would put their stories in as other people having their own little journeys and things like that. And I thought, past life regression seemed to be like the next step. And I'm like, I really have to do this. So I was on like chapter 6 or 7. I closed the book and I started doing research in the areas and stuff like that. And multiple places kept pointing right to you. It was interesting. And I'm like, okay, I made an appointment with you, and I was psyched, and let's go. Open the book back up, and the very next chapter I was going to read was a case study from you. Now, I'm looking at thinking this, there's no way, everybody says, oh, that's just a coincidence and stuff like that. But as time evolved, I realized there's no such thing as coincidence, that, something was connecting, something was pointing me in that direction. And, you see things, you do things, you meet people all for specific reasons. And now I fully understand it. But that back then, that kind of just blew my mind. I'm like, how is that even possible? That goes beyond coincidence.
Yep, right there and then, right on. That's guidance, right on. Absolutely. So now you come in, and so now you've got all this, you've done some of this reading, you've had some of these experiences, you come in for a panel. And Bob, by the way, folks, also did a Life Between Lives regression with me. And I know Nikki mentioned it earlier when in the very first segment, first cast, when she talked about Dr. Michael Newton. Dr. Michael Newton wrote 2 books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. These are books about the afterlife, people's recall of afterlife experience as souls when they leave their past life and before they incarnate into the next lifetime. We go to the spiritual dimension where we process our lives and plan for the next. So just for all those people who are listening at this point, at this moment, and aren't quite certain what we're talking about, we talk about Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, because the book that Bob is talking about is Memories of the Afterlife, and I'm a chapter in there. I was very fortunate to get into that book, actually. And so to me, when I hear such stories, and I hear it so often, Bob, it's amazing. Here you are, someone's looking for something, and they, and sure enough, you find my name. Oh, look at this. Everything points to this guy. And then you open the book back up, and boom, there I am as a chapter.
Yeah, at the next chapter, literally, not 2 chapters in, but the next one I'm about to read. So, to me, that goes like way beyond coincidence.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is perfect. So obviously I'm coming in, I'm going to do my past life regression. I'm signing up for my Life Between Lives. I'm thinking this is going to hold all of the answers for me. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
So coming from my past life regression and again, like Michael had said, I was never under hypnosis. I don't know what it was like, but this is a different type of hypnosis.
Yeah.
So I'm lying there, and you are lowering my conscious and bringing up my subconscious, so you and I can have conversations. But my subconscious is alive. So it was kind of weird thinking in the same conversation that you had earlier on one of your shows that, are you making this up and all that kind of stuff? How can I carry on a conversation with you and still pull up a previous life and all of the details on it? So I think that was my first question to you after the regression was done. I'm like, did I just make all that up? But I know you had said, I can guarantee you didn't, because you kind of have leading questions that would say, I think the first thing you asked me when we entered the regression, look down at your feet and what do you see?
Yep.
You know, do you see boots or shoes? And I'm like, I'm barefoot. You know what I mean? So it was things like that you said, if you were making it up, you'd pick one of your leading questions all the way through. But I never did that. I was telling you what I was seeing, which was something completely different. So I felt comfortable that, you know, this was something that I was experiencing or had experienced before and bringing back to life, I guess.
That's wild.
And
what Bob is mentioning.
And you had mentioned this with your two previous callers, too, and I was talking with my family last night, you know, kind of excited coming onto your show and thinking, you know, there's one story that I feel like it happened yesterday, and I can tell you every detail, and that's my past life regression, even though I did it, say, 5 years ago. So, it is as clear as day. So when you say that, people have to believe it's unbelievable.
Yeah, so and that's first thing, you know, and folks, you know, as Bob is talking about going into a story and going down, what he's mentioning when I told him to look down at his feet, what he's mentioning is this: I have my checklist, and one of the parts of my checklist is, if you are in a memory moment, if you're having your experience, I should not be able to alter that experience, either through my questions or through a statement. I should not be able to alter your regression. So when someone corrects me during a past life regression, if I say, oh, you're wearing boots, and the person says, no, I'm barefoot, if we were just making up a story together, that person's just going to parrot back to me everything I say. When the person corrects me or qualifies things, if I say it's day or night and they say, well, it's late afternoon, that qualification right there lets me know they're having their own journey. So Bob, when you tell us about your past life regression, what do you recall about that life of time?
I got to visit one. I wasn't a jumper like Michael was. So I had an experience. You know, after you identified where I was, you brought me back to, I think you had mentioned, bring me back to an earlier time in your life. And then I was on a farm. It was me and my father. We were out dealing with cattle. My mother was there. We had a little house. And it seemed to be very remote. And it was very quiet. It was just the three of us trying to get a farm up and running and keep it running.
Right.
That type of deal. And obviously my dad was trying to teach me how to keep the farm going. And that was that experience. And then you had asked me, all right, go a little further in time, maybe 5 or 10 years or whatever it was. And, you know, I'm assuming it was like the most traumatic part, you know, was why I would stop there. And, you know, going back, why would I even come back to this lifetime? But I know you had said it's the most relevant to the current life I'm leading now. So it was just kind of accepting that. So 5 or 10 years later, I'm all alone out in the field. My father had passed.
Right.
And I'm looking at the house. The house is being run down. There's my mother standing on the porch, who's kind of, you know, looking a little bit hungry. And I'm thinking, this farm's starting to go under is my initial thought, because there's no way I could do it by myself. And then you had sent me, okay, let's go a little further. And at that point, I'm all by myself. You know, the fence for the cattle's run down. My mother had died. The house is in disarray. And here I am with a backpack over my shoulder, and I'm out of there. There's nothing left for me there. Just the whole farm's been totally destroyed. There's nothing I can do. So I'm heading out.
Bob, as you're telling me the story, and folks, I like to reinforce this point. As you're telling the story, do you see this all in your mind?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like clear as day in your mind, isn't it?
Clear as day. Clear as day. I can almost feel the day like it's a warm day. You know, it's really uncanny on how much you can recall and how you can relive it.
Now, folks, I just want to make a mention. When Bob came into that life, he was he had bare feet, and he thought he was naked, actually. And he had this. He was in a wooded area, kind of wandering around aimlessly. There didn't seem to be any purpose, any place, any direction that he was in. He was just kind of in this, and he's moving along, and he's moving through these different scenes. Remember the native village that you came across? You said this abandoned native village at one point, and then eventually you came across the cabin.
And I think you had asked me, "What is that?" I'm like, I have no idea. I just kind of walked past it. I don't know what relevance it had to anything at that particular time. I just probably had a memory of walking through that. But you know, as it turns out, this was the time where it was near the end of my life. I didn't know that. You know, he had brought me back a couple of steps from my childhood to my early adulthood to the time where I was actually wandering. So when I was actually looking down and saw, you know, nothing on my feet, I'm guaranteeing that, you know, these are one of my last days, and I'm wandering. So wherever I was wandering through, that's where I saw just a native village, and it was kind of uninhabited. So I don't know how old it was or anything like that, but I just remembered seeing it. It had really no relevance.
Right. No, it was a part of the aimless wandering experience. You know, what I love, folks, is this. People come into their past lives and it's seen in their past life, and it may be later in the past life, and we have no context. So here it is, this kind of wandering aimlessly, kind of vagabond individual that Bob is experiencing himself as being, and we have no context. Why would this person find themselves there? So what do? We go back to his childhood. He's a 10-year-old boy, but if you recall, Bob, you were kind of disillusioned about being a farmer. With your father there in that moment, you had said that you really didn't want to be there. This really wasn't really what you wanted to do. And you were kind of stuck there, it felt like.
Well, yeah, and I think at that time, being probably the only child, I had no choice. So I was kind of accepting it. And so when my father was teaching me, I was probably just really, you know, not really paying attention and not learning what I should have. And if I did, maybe I was going to be able to keep the farm up and running. Who knows? But when it came time for me to do it, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't do it alone.
Right. So now you leave the farm. Yeah. And from that scene, where do we go after you leave the farm?
Well, after I leave the farm, then I'm out wandering again, and I think I came across this cabin, and I went into the cabin, looking around, and it was a beautifully well-kept cabin. There was nobody in there, but somebody was living there because you could see food up on the shelves and things like that, and I just felt this overwhelming feeling of envy and, you know, why couldn't I pull this off with my own family in my own house? And I mean, I didn't steal anything. I had no interest in any of that. I was just kind of looking around going, how was they able to pull it off? And I wasn't able to pull it off. And so, you know, not only envy, but sadness on, you know, watching both my parents die and wondering if I had anything to do with my mother dying because I wasn't able to support the farm. And so there's guilt, there's envy, there's sadness, and so I'm just like overwhelmed with everything. And by the time I left that cabin, it was shortly after that I came across, you know, this cliff part. And it's kind of funny because I remember you just about to ask me a question like, what are you thinking or something like that? And I'm like, yeah, I just jumped. And you're like, oh, you know, I just feel this sense of urgency coming up. Like you didn't want me to feel the pain of crashing down on the rocks or something.
No, when someone's going to die tragically, it's unnecessary to go back there in that experience. Absolutely.
Right. But so somehow you were able to pull that off. And you said, you know, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. When you said, what are you looking at? I said, I'm looking at my body lying on the rocks, but I look up on the top and I can see my soul up there. I can see my white light up there. So and that just kind of left, I'm sure, as my body jumps. It's like, yeah, I'm not going with you. You know what I mean? So it stayed up there.
Right.
But I didn't feel anything. So you caught me in time and it felt okay and that kind of stuff. But that was definitely the end. That's why I say when I was walking barefoot and walking,
you entered into
the end walking toward the ultimate ending here.
Yeah. Now, the lesson of that life. I did listen to yours again, and I did listen to this part, certainly. Do you recall the lesson?
Yeah, the lesson had to deal with, like a lot of what I'm dealing with now. And I think a lot of it came when I did the Life Between Lives, too, because it kind of all came connected. Because after I did that, you're like, oh, yeah, you know, the lesson of trying to be successful and not failing and that kind of thing that came through, which is kind of why I'm leading the life I'm leading now, which remember I said I had all those dots disconnected up there. As I finish that and I'm starting to piece all this together, all these dots are starting to connect. And even something that happened 30 years ago, I can say, I know why that happened now, you know, and it's all starting to make sense and it's all starting to connect to the point where I almost wanted to rush in and say, give me another one. And, but I had to process it enough to be able to do that.
Well, it's interesting, Bob. You know, the in that lifetime there was the lesson around the idea of hard work. Certainly was what you had mentioned. Actually, you had said you had actually said at the end. I asked you, and you said hard work. It doesn't always work out. And I asked you, what's the understanding? You said that's all he did. Hard work didn't equal a reward. And I asked you, what's it all about? You said, I took the easy way out and I left his life. But the idea is, I was curious, how does this apply to your life now? And, as I got to know you, you found yourself, and please correct me if I'm off on this. Actually, I'm going to ask you, how do you see that life of, it was Bill, actually, is what you called yourself.
Yeah, his name was Billy, yep.
Yeah. How do you see that life and the lesson from that life and its application in this life, even without the Life Between Lives regression at this moment?
Well, those little people that know me would say, like, I've always had more than one job. Being around the house, I would always make sure that everything worked. And, so I still have that hard work ethic going on there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to be like, I'm going to make sure that it works this time, that maybe my hard work is focused and has a goal and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the way I've always been spending my life.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've had great family, great friends, for support systems and things like that, who will accept, whatever I'm kind of bringing to the table, I guess, because I'm going to say I'm a completely different person now than I was 20 or 30 years ago.
Sure.
And they kind of just rolled with me at that point. But they also kind of understand, it's making sense to them, too, as to, why I live the way I live and why I do what I do. Yeah. I'm going to say it was hard for them because they're thinking, I lived a certain way for 40 plus years and all of a sudden it's changing. So they're thinking, maybe the chemotherapy fried my brain or whatever it would be, but it's actually just a quick uptake on a spiritual journey that if I had done it over a 40-year period, it might have been so gradual that people wouldn't notice, but it was night and day when I came out of this. And they can attribute it to, being sick or whatever, but I know what I'm attributing it to. And, things that bothered me before don't bother me now. I still work hard, but I kind of a little bit more mindful of the day because of it and can enjoy it a little bit more where, earlier days I'd be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was my way to make sure that, yes, I'm going to work hard, but then I can have some money to put toward the success of my family and my house and that kind of thing because I guess failing was not going to be an option.
So, in that way, the life of Bill was one side of the spectrum, but there was a psychological context to the life of Bill, and that was he had no purpose, he lost his place, he felt no direction, and he didn't have a passion about whatever he was doing. Now, Bob comes into this life, and he's going to overcompensate. He is going to work hard, and he's going to hold more than one job, and he's going to keep everything going, and he's going to work 12 hours a day and everything about that. But what happens when the mindset that goes through that is there's a quality of rigidity that starts to enter in, a quality of survivalism. If I'm not working hard, I don't survive. I don't make it. No one makes it. And if other people aren't working hard around me, how do I react to that as well? So I create greater tension because hard work isn't just specific to me. This is a survival reality of mine. It contextualizes everywhere in that sense when a person who goes through such a journey. Then Bob came in for a Life Between Lives regression. I don't want to go into that part of it, Bob, but since your sessions, we spoke this morning and you told me something that really, really, really impressed me. And I'm wondering if you would share the effect of all this work we did together, these 2 sessions that we had done. How do you see it affecting you and your life?
Well, we talked a lot this morning. You have to remind me which piece you want me to talk about.
You mentioned this kind of process of awakening that you now seem to be a part of, that this is how it led you forward to some sort of quality of awakening in this lifetime.
Okay.
Did I misunderstand you?
No. That was actually what it was. That was leading toward, I guess the thing you could call it is a spiritual awakening because I couldn't put a name to it before. I didn't know what everything was going on about that. Now, the spiritual awakening has many parts to it, as you would know.
Sure.
But to be able to, like the Life Between Lives allowed me to meet my guide, and I can connect with that entity now. So I'm fairly convinced that the voices that I was hearing before, you know, in the chemo chair, that was coming from my guide. I can identify that a lot easier now. So I can trust what I'm hearing. They say, you know, it's your gut instinct. It's really your guides, you know, telling you what to do. And, you know, when I stop at a red light and you used to get mad, like, oh, I always hit at red lights. I look at it as, you know, my guide's keeping me in time to protect me and all that kind of stuff. So
what a way to contextualize a red light. That's awesome. You hear that, folks? See, if you hit a red light and you're thinking, why always me? I love Bob's thought. It's my guide getting me back on time. I love that.
Yeah. And so it's a way for me to not get frustrated and angry. You know, the little things that used to bother me so much before, I'm not going to say I'm going to rationalize them, but I know it has a meaning to it. Then, like going back to what I said before, nothing happens for no reason. There's a specific reason why everything's happening.
Sure.
Whether it's protecting you, whether it's advancing you in your journey, and even just you know, from the way I live my life, there's been a lot of people, family and friends and stuff that just kind of, in the beginning, would kind of look at me with a crooked head, but now they're starting to think, you know, there's some validity to this. You know, we have deep conversations about, you know, like the thought process, and they're getting a little bit involved into it because they're finding, you know, their lives a little bit easier when they can have a little more empathy and a little bit more mindfulness when they go through their day and things like that. And you know, so I mean, cancer was a horrible thing, but it actually led me to this day right here, right now, where I've never been happier in my life with the way I lead my life, with the people around me and that kind of thing, and the associations I have and the conversations I have. And I think that I would probably still be directionless if I didn't, you know, kind of connect a past life with my current life and my life between lives with why I'm here now. All those kind of things, the pre-birth planning that you had spoken about in previous shows and things like that. It's all connected, and I have very few dots left that need to be connected. It's just amazing to look up and understand why I met a certain person 30 years ago and why the conversation that we had, you know, we had it, and I never saw that person again. You know, so I understand all of these things that are happening, and it's just a relationship with an awakening and an individual path.
Wow. You know, folks, I couldn't have said it better myself. I don't think I can comment any further on that. That to me is an ultimate outcome. I mean, what great fortune to find this sense of relationship with yourself that brings you a sense of, I'm going to say, kind of communing with life, where you feel a resonance and you see whatever it is in front of you that's taking place, and you're able to contextualize it and not be a reactive person to it, but actually see it, process it, and find a way of responding to it. A way that is much more authentic to the journey we are on. And I tell you, Bob, it was absolutely awesome working with you when we worked together, and all the conversations we have, I enjoy so much. I'm
actually fortunate that I met with you because, like I said, I talked to one person, don't do that anymore, but go see Jonathan Yorks. Everything was pointing in that direction, and I see that chapter. And without you, I don't think I could have gotten there. I don't think anybody probably would have had the understanding and the patience and that kind of stuff to get me there. So I feel just as fortunate to meeting you as I am to where I am on the journey, because I don't think I could got here without you. So thanks.
Man, that's well, I'm not going to step on that one either. I'll leave that one alone. Bob, thank you so much. I don't want to keep any more. I appreciate you spending this time and sharing your story with the audience. I look forward to the next time we connect. Be well.
Okay, thanks again. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, that was my client, Bob. Just an incredible soul on the journey. The time we shared together, you know, I'm very fortunate, because when people come into me, like any therapist, like any person, we all have our existential angst. We're all dealing with our journeys and our challenges. And of course, I have people coming in seeking answers, because that's why we do the work. That's why people mostly come in. They want to get answers, either for healing or resolution, or for existential understanding, or some sort of personal understanding of life lesson and purpose, or whatever else, relationships, whatever else may be within in the answer matrix that they are seeking. But when we get them, each person tonight described a phenomena of a journey, each one unique, each one coming in for their own reason. You know, Bob discovered himself through an illness, and this illness, as he discovered, this illness was a path for him. It opened him up to taking a journey, and along that journey, I had the good fortune of working with Bob, as much as I have the good fortune working with all my clients, but I had the good fortune of working with Bob. And when I hear him so many years later, you know, this is why the work I do, I find it an ongoing phenomena of being affirmed. The majority of the people that come in have these experiences. And years later, they can still see this experience in their mind. Years later, they still feel its relevance in their life, in the change that it brought about within their experience, their being. Again, this is spiritual existentialism. That means this is looking at you as a soul, as an incarnational being, going through lifetimes, presently in your human life, and how your past lives are how they all feed into it, and how in between lives, before you came into this human life, or the one you have, that you were in the afterlife, that you were in the spiritual dimension, that you did meet with your guide, that you did commune with counsel of wise master guides, that you do have a soul group, that you did plan for the one you are being and chose the one you are being specifically so you could grow, specifically so you could evolve. So the one you are being, treat that one with like a precious gift, because only this one can take you to the promised land. Otherwise, you'd be somebody else. So that's tonight's episode, clients sharing past life stories. I hope you enjoyed the stories this evening. Thank you to my clients, Nikki and Michael and Bob. It was just such an awesome time to spend time on the phone with you and talking on air with you. We'll do this again sometime. I have more people that want to share their stories. So every once in a while, we'll come in and we'll offer stories like this. We're also going to, at some point, I'm not certain if I'll do it before the beginning of the year, we're going to do a show on people talking about their life between lives regression stories and those journeys. And that's another layer and another level altogether. And we'll have clients come on talking about their afterlife memories and their journey between lifetimes. Next week's show, I haven't quite decided yet, but there's a possibility, and if I can make it happen, I got contacted by a former client who does something quite interesting. It's called reverse speech. I'll talk much more about it if we're going to go in that direction for next week's show. I just want to make certain that he would be, on such a short notice, be available for next week's show. Following that, I'm hoping to have a show the week afterwards. Next week is the 19th. Then the next week after that is the 26th. Undecided if we're going to have a show on the 26th. It's the day after Christmas. It could be one of those repeat shows, or folks, very possible, I could do a remote show for about an hour. So we don't know. I'll keep you much more into that. I'll let you know much more about that after next week, at next week's show. I'm thinking of one thing now. Next week's show also could equally be about near-death experiences. And if I can get a few people to call in for that, I'll have people calling in and describing their near-death experience stories. That would be a show I really, really, really want to do. I just have to make certain I can get a few people on the air like we did tonight that are available to talk about their stories. Okay? As far as this show, we have talked all about the past lives and past life stories. People have shared the experience. They all shared that they had seen these. They can still see them in their mind years later. They still see these, the imagery, and they still feel the feelings, and they still have the lessons, and they still feel the effect of these past life regressions. It's an incredible phenomena. I am amazed. That's why I do this work. So if you have any questions further about the service of having a past life regression, please go to jonathanyorks.com, go on my contact page or the home page. You'll see you can send me a contact form, schedule a time for initial telephone consult. It's complimentary. There is no charge for this consult whatsoever. I'm more than happy to answer all your questions about the services I provide and how I can be helpful for you. as well. If you have any questions about the show, tonight's show, or any show, feel free to send me a question as well. You can send it to my email, jonathan@mysoulmyself.com. You can also call me directly or text me at 617-875-6686, or send me a message on my Facebook page. And please, if you would, follow the Jonathan York's MALMFT Facebook page. This is where I have my Past Life Regression radio show, and every week. So if you feel it like the show, follow the show. It does a lot for me when you do, absolutely, and I so appreciate it if you would. So in that light, next week's show, I'll let you know much more about it. I'll keep you in touch. This week's show is now coming to a conclusion. I hope you enjoyed the time this week. I am Jonathan Yorks. We are every Wednesday here from 7 to 9 at the Go Network at GoNet.com. This is the Past Life Regression Radio Show. We'll see you next week, next Wednesday, 7 to 9 p.m. Until then, be wonderfully well.